The rain in Chicago always feels heavier when you are broke, but it feels heaviest when you are actually making six figures and still cannot afford to look at your bank account on a Tuesday morning. The city moves fast, neon signs reflecting off wet pavement, and every single billboard is a beautifully designed whisper telling you that who you are right now is simply not enough. You sit in your car, the engine idling, looking at a digital dashboard that cost more than your first 3 vehicles combined, and you feel a strange, hollow tightening in your chest. Every month, the direct deposit lands with a satisfying digital chime, a substantial sum of American currency meant to represent your intelligence, your long hours, and your worth in the marketplace. Yet, within 48 hours, before the crisp reality of that capital can even register in your mind, it evaporates. It does not go toward buying your freedom, nor does it fund a legacy that outlasts your breath. Instead, it bleeds out into hundreds of microscopic lacerations, a premium streaming subscription you haven't opened since last Thanksgiving, a Tier 1 smartphone upgrade that performs the exact same functions as the one currently in your pocket, and artisanal meals ordered from an application because you were too emotionally exhausted to boil water. We wear clothes that still have the conceptual tags of our social validation attached to them, living in spaces crowded with things that felt utterly vital in the fleeting second of purchase but feel entirely invisible the moment they arrive at our doorstep. The baseline delusion of the Western mind is that the solution to this suffocating cycle is a simple arithmetic equation: earn more. We tell ourselves that if our salary doubles, if the next promotion lands, or if the side hustle finally scales, the haunting phantom of financial scarcity will permanently vanish. But there is a silent, predatory law governing human psychology that modern financial institutions carefully hide from public view. When income expands, the uncultivated ego expands faster. Consider the trajectory of a young corporate attorney in Manhattan who, upon securing a partnership, saw his annual compensation jump from $150,000 to nearly $500,000. By all conventional metrics of the American dream, this man had achieved escape velocity. Yet, within 8 months, his baseline anxiety reached an all-time high. He moved from a perfectly functional apartment into a luxury high-rise overlooking Central Park, traded his reliable sedan for a foreign sports car that spent most of its time stuck in gridlock, and began frequenting private clubs where a single dinner cost more than a week of groceries. His salary had tripled, but his net savings remained virtually identical to his first year out of law school. He was earning $500,000 a year, yet he was precisely one missed paycheck away from complete financial ruin. He had merely upgraded the quality of his prison bars, exchanging iron for gold, while remaining completely enslaved to the immediate gratification of his impulses. But something even more dangerous happens when this cycle goes unchecked for a decade. It fundamentally alters your identity, transforming you from a producer of value into a passive consumer of identity markers, leaving you permanently vulnerable to the slightest economic tremor. Across the Pacific, within the hyperdense, high-pressure urban grid of Tokyo, millions of ordinary citizens living on completely standard salaries have quietly engineered a profound counter-revolution against this global consumerist programming. They did not discover a miraculous loophole to double their wages overnight, nor did they participate in high-risk financial speculation. Instead, they weaponized a deep psychological paradigm shift. They found a way to systematically want less. And within that profound reduction, they unlocked an absolute state of financial and psychological sovereignty that no amount of raw capital can ever buy. They found actual freedom. To understand how this works in the real world, we must look at the documented transformation of a 37-year-old Tokyo resident named Fumio. A decade ago, Fumio was a textbook casualty of modern consumer culture. He possessed a respectable editorial job, earned a reliable middle-class income, and spent every spare yen acquiring things. His small apartment was a dense, claustrophobic archive of personal identity markers, vintage vinyl records he rarely listened to, rare books purchased to project intellect but never opened, advanced electronics that became obsolete under the weight of newer models, and wardrobes bursting with garments meant to convey a highly specific social status. From the outside, looking through the lens of social media, Fumio's life appeared enviable, curated, and entirely full. From the inside, however, it felt like an emotional swamp. Every single morning, he woke up with a heavy, unexplainable sense of defeat, feeling as though he was already miles behind before his feet even touched the floor. This paralysis did not exist because his income was inadequate. It existed because his lifestyle had quietly become too massive, too complex, and too heavy for a human soul to maintain. He was constantly managing an invisible army of possessions that demanded his attention, required ongoing maintenance, extracted monthly storage and subscription fees, and constantly stimulated a burning desire for the next incremental upgrade. One rainy Tuesday evening, after an exhausting 12-hour shift that left him numb, Fumio sat cross-legged on his floor, looked around his crowded room, and asked a deceptively simple question that every adult in the West must eventually confront: why do I actually own all of this? When he looked past the initial rationalizations, he realized a terrifying truth: he couldn't find a legitimate answer. Every single object had been purchased for a reason that had long since expired. The initial dopamine spike of the purchase had withered within days. The novelty had vanished within weeks. What remained was nothing but pure, unadulterated weight, physical weight filling his room, financial weight draining his capital, and mental weight fracturing his focus. That very evening, Fumio made a radical decision. He did not buy a self-help book or register for a financial planning seminar. He simply reached for a heavy-duty trash bag and began removing items from his immediate reality. He began slowly, targeting clothes that had spent over a year hanging like museum exhibits in his closet. Then, gaining momentum, as his psychological resistance cracked, he moved to the duplicate electronics, the redundant furniture, and the decorative clutter that filled physical space without serving a singular, distinct purpose. Week after week, item by item, he systematically stripped away the external layers of his constructed identity. As his living space became increasingly empty, an extraordinary, counterintuitive psychological phenomenon began to manifest. He felt entirely lighter. His chronic morning anxiety began to evaporate, replaced by a crystalline mental clarity, because he was no longer subconsciously hunting for things to buy, maintain, or display. His monthly expenditures plummeted to a fraction of his historical baseline. His liquid savings began to compound at a rate he previously thought impossible. He hadn't received a massive corporate promotion, he hadn't inherited wealth, and he hadn't discovered a secret investment algorithm. He had simply stopped forcing his labor to pay for things that drained his spirit, while offering zero structural meaning to his existence. This is the foundational cornerstone of the minimalist philosophy. You do not require a massive influx of capital to secure absolute financial peace. You require a radical, calculated reduction of your baseline desires. Wanting less is not an inherent personality trait that you are either born with or denied. It is a highly sophisticated executive skill that must be deliberately trained, practiced, and mastered. And once this skill is integrated into your psychological foundation, it fundamentally alters your relationship with the material world forever. To understand why this shift is so rare and so fiercely resisted, we have to look at the underlying neurological mechanics of human satisfaction. Imagine holding a beautifully crafted ceramic bowl and attempting to fill it to the brim with water. You pour carefully, watching the fluid rise toward the edge, but just as the water reaches the lip, the bottom of the bowl silently and invisibly expands downward. Suddenly, the water level drops, and the bowl is half empty once again. You pour more water, exerting more energy, but the moment you near completion, the base expands further. No matter how much volume you introduce, no matter how fast you pour, the bowl remains perpetually incomplete. This is the exact structural blueprint of modern human desire, a phenomenon that behavioral scientists and psychologists formally classify as hedonic adaptation. The human central nervous system is evolutionary hardwired for survival, not for prolonged contentment. When you experience a positive shift in your material conditions, whether it is a $20,000 raise, a brand new luxury vehicle, or a larger home in a premier zip code, your brain releases a potent surge of dopamine. For a brief, intoxicating window of approximately 14 to 30 days, you experience a genuine state of elevated satisfaction. You feel successful, secure, and elevated above your peers. But then, with absolute biological certainty, your neurological baseline resets. The luxury vehicle ceases to be an extraordinary achievement. It becomes the standard baseline of your daily commute. The larger home ceases to be a palace. It becomes the ordinary walls within which you sleep. Your internal emotional thermometer returns precisely to its original, pre-raise equilibrium, but your fixed monthly expenses remain permanently elevated at the new high water mark. The bowl has expanded, but your soul remains empty. This biological trap is the precise reason why millions of working professionals across America, currently earning double or triple what they commanded 5 years ago, report feeling absolutely no more financially secure today than they did when they were scraping by in college. Their income grew linearly, but their unexamined desires grew exponentially, keeping them permanently bound to the treadmill of survival. But something even more dangerous happens when you allow hedonic adaptation to dictate your life choices. You forfeit the ability to capitalize on sudden, life-defining opportunities because you're overhead. As an anchor, holding you in place, minimalist practices interrupt this destructive cycle, not by demanding that you live in ascetic poverty or practice extreme self-mortification, but by introducing a rigorous cognitive filter before capital ever leaves your hand. In traditional Japanese consumer discipline, a practitioner utilizes 3 distinct internal inquiries before executing any non-essential transaction. Does this object solve a legitimate structural need? Do I possess a genuine, enduring love for its utility, or am I merely seduced by its novelty? Does this acquisition actively serve the highest vision of my life, or am I simply reacting to a fleeting emotional impulse? If an honest, unshielded examination yields a definitive affirmative to all 3 questions, the item is acquired with 0 guilt. But if the cross-examination reveals that the purchase is driven by a hidden emotional deficit, a desire to alleviate boredom after a stressful week at the office, a need to project status during an upcoming social gathering, or a quiet, ambient fear that your life looks inadequate compared to the digital avatars of strangers online, the practitioner commits to a mandatory 72-hour pause. In 90% of documented cases, when 72 hours of zero stimulus reflection pass, the burning urgency of the desire entirely dissolves on its own. This occurs because the vast majority of modern consumer transactions are not logical, strategic decisions made by rational economic actors. They are clumsy, automated emotional self-medications designed to temporarily soothe an anxious mind. Minimalism does not shame you for experiencing these human vulnerabilities. It provides you with the psychological armor required to observe them clearly without paying for them with your life's energy. When you master this internal filter, your hard-earned capital remains firmly in your possession. Month after month, year after year, it sits quietly in your accounts, accumulating mass, building momentum, until one morning you look at your financial reality and realize you have constructed a fortress of genuine security. This transformation did not occur because you manipulated the external economy. It occurred because you took absolute dominion over your inner architecture of desire. To fully grasp the structural power of this philosophy, we must examine a profound concept embedded within classical design and spatial philosophy, the principle of Ma. Translated literally, ma signifies negative space, the intentional emptiness between objects, or the pregnant pause between musical notes. In a traditional home designed under this philosophy, what is deliberately left out of the room is considered significantly more valuable than what is placed within it. A single, flawless in-gouache painting hanging on an otherwise bare drywall, a solitary, hand-carved wooden stool positioned in an empty corner. This deliberate void does not communicate poverty, lack, or financial deprivation. It communicates supreme intentionality, absolute focus, and untethered freedom. Western cultural programming is fundamentally terrified of empty space. We treat a bare wall as an explicit problem that must be solved with decor. We treat an open afternoon on our calendar as a void that must be crammed with consumption, and we treat an unallocated surplus of cash at the end of the month as a green light to execute an immediate upgrade. The ancient philosophers understood a law that modern financial theorists are only now beginning to discover: empty space possesses its own inherent, compounding value. An unburdened budget behaves exactly like an unburdened room, a life wherein every single dollar, euro, or yen is aggressively spoken for before it even arrives has zero negative space. It possesses no room for sudden, market-shifting opportunities, no capacity to absorb catastrophic medical emergencies, and no financial runway to walk away from a toxic, soul-crushing corporate environment. The preservation of empty budget space is not an act of self-punishment, it is the ultimate act of self-preservation. Let us analyze a strict, comparative case study of two corporate executives working within the tech sector in Austin, Texas. Both men command an identical base salary of $250,000 per annum. The first executive, entirely synchronized with conventional Western consumer habits, fills every single corner of his income grid. He leases a brand new German luxury SUV every 2 years, maintains an ultra-premium membership at an exclusive country club to network with peers, routinely dines at Michelin-starred establishments, and upgrades his entire home automation system with every seasonal release. At the end of every calendar month, despite his elite income, his net cash flow hovers around zero. He has zero negative space. He is highly visible, aggressively polished, and completely fragile. The second executive, having integrated the philosophy of Ma, deliberately chooses to construct his life within a compact, 40% fraction of his actual earning capacity. He drives a pristine, 10-year-old Japanese sedan that requires nothing but basic oil changes. He lives in a modest, beautifully organized mid-century home that leaves him with a minimal mortgage. He dresses in high-quality, unbranded attire that focuses entirely on fit and utility rather than logos. He doesn't do this because he is broke. He does it because he prioritizes the absolute ownership of his time over the superficial admiration of strangers. At the end of every month, an immense reservoir of unallocated capital remains in his possession. This negative space is immediately channeled into high-yield, liquid wealth-building instruments. When a massive, unprecedented macroeconomic downturn strikes the tech industry, causing widespread corporate layoffs, the first executive plunges into an immediate state of clinical panic. He cannot miss a single month of work without facing immediate asset repossession and public humiliation. He is forced to accept any degrading, high-stress position available just to keep his head above water. The second executive, however, observes the economic chaos with absolute equanimity. His immense financial reservoir can sustain his exact lifestyle for the next 5 years without earning a single dime. He uses the downturn to take a 6-month sabbatical, spend time with his family, and quietly acquire distressed assets at a steep discount. But something even more profound happens when you permanently operate from this position of strength. You stop viewing money as a tool to buy things and begin viewing it exclusively as a tool to buy sovereignty. The difference between these two individuals is a fundamental divergence in life trajectory. One directs the finite energy of his labor toward the superficial performance of success, while the other directs it toward the permanent acquisition of freedom. There is an incredibly uncomfortable, unyielding truth that most individuals spend an entire lifetime desperately avoiding. Every single time you spend capital to merely look successful, you push the actual reality of your success further into the distant future. Every premium upgrade purchased, specifically to elicit a flicker of envy from your social circle or to secure validation from peers who are themselves drowning in debt, is a heavy financial tax you are voluntarily paying for their temporary opinion. It is an opinion that inevitably fades within 48 hours, an automated social reaction that disappears from their minds by the weekend, while the cold, hard financial liability remains printed on your credit statement. For the next 24 months, minimalism demands that you completely exit this theater of performance. It introduces a sharp distinction between visible wealth and invisible wealth. Visible wealth is loud, fragile, and intensely demanding of attention. It is found in the designer labels, the high-end watch collections, and the oversized real estate footprints that serve as loud announcements of status. Invisible wealth, by contrast, is completely silent, deeply grounded, and entirely unbothered by public perception. It exists in the fully funded emergency accounts that transform sudden crises into minor inconveniences. It exists in the paid-off debts that ensure no outside entity owns a single percentage of your future labor. It exists in the appreciating assets that quietly accumulate compounded value while you sleep, creating a compounding stream of capital that will eventually support your grandchildren. This invisible fortress is where true power resides. It cannot be photographed for social media. It cannot be casually flexed at a high school reunion, and it will never earn you superficial compliments from people who do not care about your well-being. But it yields a premium emotional currency that no luxury boutique on earth can stock: absolute peace of mind, unshakable self-respect, and the quiet, rock-solid confidence that no matter what economic storms materialize on the horizon, your foundation cannot be broken. To transition from the exhausting performance of wealth to the actual realization of inner dominion, you must implement a structured, chronological architecture of execution. This is not a vague motivational framework. It is a highly predictable timeline of psychological and financial transformation that requires absolute consistency. During the initial 30 days of this practice, you will undergo an intense, often painful period of psychological detoxification. The moment you implement a strict freeze on all non-essential consumer and begin systematically clearing the physical clutter from your immediate environment, your brain will experience a form of dopamine withdrawal. You will feel a powerful, automated urge to browse online marketplaces when you are stressed, or to purchase a premium item to reward yourself after a difficult day. This is the exact moment you must hold the line. You are training your nervous system to tolerate empty space without rushing to fill it with commerce. By day 30, the initial agitation will give way to a profound sense of lightness. Your living space will breathe, your digital accounts will stabilize, and the constant, ambient noise of consumer temptation will begin to lose its grip on your attention. By the 90-day mark, the compounding effect of your restraint becomes clearly visible. You will observe a dramatic, unprecedented surge in your liquid capital reserves. Because you have eliminated the hundreds of invisible microtransactions that previously drained your earnings, your cash reserves will have grown into a substantial financial buffer. More importantly, a profound cognitive shift occurs. Your baseline definition of what constitutes an emergency completely changes. When you have zero savings, a flat tire or a broken appliance feels like a catastrophic life event that ruins your month. When you possess a 3-month cash buffer sitting quietly in reserve, that exact same scenario is reduced to a minor, 20-minute administrative task. You will notice your sleep quality improving, your workplace anxiety diminishing, and a quiet sense of capability beginning to define your daily demeanor. At the 180-day milestone, your entire relationship with social status will have undergone a radical evolution. You will have spent 6 full months operating within a high-discipline filter, completely detached from the competitive consumption of your peers. The true architects of freedom do not measure progress by how much they can acquire, but by how much they can endure leaving behind. At the 180-day milestone, the internal metric of wealth shifts entirely away from outward display. Consider a modern professional who systematically identifies a single, recurring leak in their budget, a redundant monthly subscription, an automated dining habit driven by routine rather than nourishment, or a category of lifestyle spending fueled purely by social comparison. Redirecting even a marginal amount of capital, a mere $50 or $100, away from these trivial traps and into a wealth-generating vehicle initiates a profound psychological transformation. The absolute dollar amount is secondary to the neurochemical reinforcement of the habit itself. By deliberately diverting funds from transient pleasure to long-term resilience, the mind transitions from the short-sighted survival mode of the consumer to the strategic positioning of the sovereign individual. This internal discipline is anchored by a structural mechanism known in traditional Eastern minimalism as the rule of singularity. For every new element that enters your environment, an existing one must depart. When a new device is acquired, the legacy asset is immediately liquidated. When a new garment is introduced to the wardrobe, an older piece is systematically donated. If a new digital commitment is established, a previous subscription is decisively terminated. This elegant practice addresses the most insidious threat to financial sovereignty, the silent, compounding drain of accumulation. In the early 2000s, a team of behavioral economists conducted a landmark study on domestic environments, revealing that the average household loses thousands of dollars annually not to major catastrophic expenses, but to the hidden friction of maintaining, storing, insuring, and upgrading objects they rarely use. Every physical possession demands a corresponding psychological and financial tax. By strictly enforcing this equilibrium, you prevent your lifestyle from expanding organically, forcing your capital to accumulate in silence instead. History offers a stark template for this liberation through subtraction. The renowned minimalist philosopher Fumio Sasaki documented his final transition from a cluttered Tokyo apartment to a room stripped entirely to its bare essentials. Standing amidst the emptiness, he reported experiencing an emotional state completely foreign to modern consumer culture, not a sense of bereavement, regret, or scarcity, but a profound, unshakable tranquility. The Japanese define this specific aesthetic phenomenon not as the void of absence, but as the presence of intention. Sasaki did not elevate his social standing by increasing his gross revenues. He achieved absolute freedom by radically altering his psychological contract with wealth. This fundamental rewiring of desire instantly lowered his baseline stress while elevating his liquidity to historic highs. His salary remained constant, yet his economic leverage multiplied exponentially because he ceased outsourcing his peace of mind to external markets. This paradigm shift represents a quiet revolution against the dominant economic narrative. It rejects the childish notion that security must be purchased from merchants, demonstrating instead that autonomy is found by protecting the vacant space within your budget. A stark biological reality underlies human nature. The dopamine hit generated by an impulse purchase degrades within precisely 72 hours, leaving behind a subtle emotional deficit that compels the individual to repeat the cycle. To break this loop, the sovereign mind implements a strict 24-hour pause prior to any non-essential transaction, asking a single, definitive question: does this asset provide enduring utility, or am I merely attempting to fill an internal void with external matter? By the 1-year mark, this systemic discipline manifests as a completely restructured identity. You transition from a passive consumer susceptible to predatory marketing into an active investor, who views every unspent dollar as an autonomous worker, deployed to secure your future. While your peers remain trapped in a hyper-accelerated rat race, expanding their liabilities to match their rising incomes, you quietly construct an invisible fortress of liquid capital. Your true net worth becomes entirely detached from the approval of the crowd. Looking forward to the 5-year horizon, the trajectory diverges completely. Those who ignore this principle find themselves trapped in a state of high-earning poverty, eternally vulnerable to corporate termination, market volatility, and acute anxiety, regardless of their nominal salary. Conversely, the individual who masters this internal domain achieves authentic financial independence. This independence does not commence on the day your revenue triples. It is realized the precise moment you no longer require external validation to validate your existence. The trajectory of your entire life changes, not through a grand, dramatic upheaval, but through a singular, disciplined breath taken before your next transaction. Ultimately, this quiet mastery alters the very nature of time itself. For the debt-laden consumer, every hour spent at the office desk is a frantic negotiation to fund past liabilities. For the sovereign individual, time transforms into a compounding asset. At the 10-year mark, the capital accumulated through these microscopic choices forms an unassailable buffer equivalent to 36 months of baseline living expenses, safely yielding passive returns. This financial runway grants the rarest of modern luxuries, the absolute power to say no to toxic corporate cultures, the freedom to pursue high-reward ventures, and the profound peace of knowing that your daily existence is entirely self-funded.